In the dimly lit gyms of Brooklyn, New York, in the late 1970s, a boy wandered the streets with a face hardened by survival and a soul bruised by violence. His name was Michael Gerard Tyson. By the time most kids his age were still fumbling through childhood, Tyson had already tasted the bitterness of poverty, crime, and abandonment. Arrested dozens of times before he was even a teenager, Tyson seemed destined to be another forgotten story from the streets. But fate had other plans. Inside a juvenile detention center, his fists spoke louder than his words. His raw power, his feral instinct, caught the attention of a counselor who introduced him to legendary trainer Cus D'Amato. Cus, a man obsessed with boxing, not merely as a sport but as a philosophy of life, saw in Tyson not just a fighter, but a prodigy, a vessel for greatness. Under Cus, Tyson learned discipline, focus, and the art of controlled aggression. The peekaboo style, with its relentless head movement and explosive counterpunching, became his signature. By 20 years old, Tyson was the youngest heavyweight champion in history. He didn't just win fights, he destroyed men. He walked into the ring like a storm given human form, his black trunks and silent demeanor radiating menace. Fighters who once stood tall in press conferences found themselves trembling when Tyson's eyes locked onto theirs. The bell would ring, and within seconds, careers would crumble. Trevor Berbick fell in 2 rounds. Michael Spinks, a previously undefeated champion, was obliterated in 91 seconds. Tyson wasn't just a champion, he was a force of nature. But beneath the armor of invincibility, cracks were forming. The death of Cus D'Amato in 1985 left Tyson without the guiding father figure who had anchored his chaos. Success brought fame, but fame brought distractions. A whirlwind marriage, lawsuits, partying, and entourage drama swirled around him. By the late 1980s, Tyson was still demolishing opponents, but his preparation was slipping. The hunger of the streets was giving way to the excess of stardom. And then came February 11, 1990. The Tokyo Dome. The opponent was James "Buster" Douglas. He was seen as a decent fighter, skilled but inconsistent, never quite living up to his potential. The bookmakers placed him as a 42-1 underdog, one of the longest odds in heavyweight history. To the world, this was a stay-busy fight for Tyson. A warm-up before bigger names like Evander Holyfield. For Tyson, it was a fight he barely trained for. His camp was riddled with chaos, trainers arguing, sparring partners neglected, late-night escapades overshadowing early morning runs. Tyson arrived in Tokyo underprepared and overconfident. Douglas, on the other hand, carried the weight of tragedy. Just weeks before the fight, his mother had passed away. For many fighters, grief would have been a distraction. For Douglas, it became fuel. Every jab, every step into the ring that night, carried her memory. The bell rang for round 1, and from the very start, the script began to defy expectations. Douglas wasn't afraid. He didn't fold under the aura of Tyson. He used his long jab, snapping Tyson's head back again and again, circling, moving, fighting with purpose. Tyson, usually the aggressor who closed distance with ease, found himself chasing shadows. His timing was off. His head movement sluggish. Round after round, Douglas grew in confidence. His combinations flowed. His jab was a spear, his footwork a dance of defiance. Tyson landed punches, but they lacked the snap of his prime. The Tokyo crowd, expecting a quick demolition, began to sense history. Then came round 8. Against the run of play, Tyson reminded the world of his power. He threw a vicious uppercut that landed flush, sending Douglas crashing to the canvas. For a brief, flickering moment, the old Tyson was back. The Tyson who ended fights in a heartbeat. The referee's count stretched. Douglas rose at 9. Bloodied, shaken, but not broken. Round 9 told a different story. Douglas came back, with fury, battering Tyson with combinations, stunning him repeatedly. Tyson's left eye was swelling grotesquely. His corner scrambled desperately, even resorting to using a rubber glove filled with water as an ice pack. A shocking display of unpreparedness at the highest level. Then came round 10, the round that shattered the myth of invincibility. Douglas launched a brutal 4-punch combination, punctuated by a crushing uppercut followed by 2 savage hooks. Tyson staggered, his legs gone, his body collapsing under the weight of inevitability. He fumbled on the canvas, searching blindly for his mouthpiece, his aura gone, his invincibility broken. The referee's count reached 10. Mike Tyson had been knocked out. The world was stunned. Commentators screamed into their microphones. Fans sat in disbelief. The invincible Mike Tyson, the monster of the heavyweight division, had been defeated not by a fellow legend, but by a man no one believed in. The Tokyo Dome was silent, save for the echo of history being written. For Douglas, it was the crowning achievement of a career. For Tyson, it was the beginning of a spiral. The loss exposed not just flaws in preparation, but flaws in his psyche. He had believed himself untouchable, and now the illusion was gone. In the aftermath, excuses flooded in. Some pointed to the chaos of Tyson's camp, others to his personal life unraveling. But history doesn't remember excuses. History remembers that on February 11, 1990, the most feared man in boxing was beaten. Tyson's first defeat was more than just a loss. It was a cultural earthquake. It showed the world that legends bleed, that even the fiercest of men are mortal. It set the stage for everything that followed the prison sentence. The failed comebacks, the desperate searches for redemption. Tokyo was the night Tyson's myth cracked, and once a myth cracks, it can never be whole again. The defeat in Tokyo left scars that ran deeper than Tyson's swollen eye. For the first time, he felt the weight of vulnerability. He was still young, still powerful, still marketable, but something had shifted. The fear that once froze opponents now carried a faint crack. Rivals who once entered the ring, already beaten, began to believe. And in boxing, belief is dangerous. Tyson returned from Japan with urgency, seeking to reclaim what was lost. He knocked out Donovan Razor Rudek in 2 brutal encounters, reasserting his presence as a force. But trouble followed outside the ring. His marriage collapsed in scandal, his personal life spiraled into chaos, and in 1992, a prison sentence for rape sent him away for nearly 3 years. By the time Tyson returned in 1995, the world had changed. The heavyweight division had moved on, with new names, new contenders. Tyson, though rusty, stormed back into the spotlight, crushing Peter McNeely in a chaotic one-round affair and reclaiming a piece of the heavyweight crown with ease. The myth was fractured, but the brand of Iron Mike was alive. He was still dangerous, still bankable, still the man fans wanted to see. But waiting in the shadows was a fighter who represented everything Tyson was not. Evander Holyfield. Holyfield was called the real deal, a nickname that began as hype but became prophecy. He was a former cruiserweight champion who had moved up to heavyweight, bringing discipline, faith, and a relentless work ethic. Unlike Tyson, Holyfield was not a product of fear or intimidation. He was molded by perseverance, by endurance, by a quiet but unbreakable belief in himself. Where Tyson was chaos, Holyfield was order. Where Tyson was raw aggression, Holyfield was controlled determination. The two were supposed to fight in 1991, but circumstances derailed it. Tyson's shocking loss to Douglas, followed by Holyfield defeating Douglas for the championship, seemed to set the stage. Yet Tyson's imprisonment delayed everything. By the time they finally met, it was November 9, 1996. At the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, the build-up was drenched in anticipation. Tyson was a massive favorite. Bookmakers, fans, and analysts expected him to overwhelm Holyfield quickly. Many believed Holyfield was past his best. He had suffered heart problems, absorbed punishing wars, and looked vulnerable in recent fights. To most of the world, this was a mismatch, another showcase for Tyson's resurgence, but Holyfield was not reading the same script. From the opening bell, the difference was stark. Tyson charged forward, head low, fists cocked, looking for the explosive finish. But Holyfield was calm, measured, unafraid. He tied Tyson up in clinches, leaned on him, and pushed him back, something few dared to do. He met fire with fire, standing his ground, absorbing Tyson's bombs, and answering with sharp counters. By round 3, the tide was shifting. Holyfield's jab disrupted Tyson's rhythm. His right hand found its mark repeatedly. Tyson's trademark head movement seemed sluggish, his combinations predictable. Holyfield was not just surviving, he was thriving. The fight grew rough. Tyson's frustration mounted. He butted heads, he swung wildly, but Holyfield's discipline never cracked. He fought like a man on a mission, like someone chosen to expose the myth for the second time in Tyson's career. Round after round, Holyfield's confidence grew. Tyson's face swelled, his aura eroded with every landed shot. In round 10, Holyfield hurt him badly with the right hand, sending shockwaves through the arena. Tyson staggered, his legs betraying him. Holyfield pounced, hammering him with relentless combinations. Then came round 11. Holyfield unleashed a barrage, pinning Tyson against the ropes. Punch after punch rained down. Tyson, trapped and broken, could no longer defend himself. The referee stepped in, waving off the fight. Evander Holyfield had stopped Mike Tyson. The world gasped. Tyson, the destroyer, the executioner of heavyweights, had been dismantled by a man many thought was washed up. Holyfield stood with his arms raised, not just victorious, but vindicated. For Tyson, it was his second defeat. But unlike Tokyo, this was different. Douglas was dismissed as a fluke, an accident of unpreparedness. Holyfield, however, had outclassed him, outmuscled him, outwilled him. It wasn't an upset, it was domination. The loss hurt Tyson's pride, but his ego demanded revenge. A rematch was signed quickly. On June 28, 1997, the two men met again at the MGM Grand. The atmosphere was electric, heavy with tension. This was more than a fight, it was redemption, vengeance, and spectacle. Tyson promised a new version of himself. Sharper, smarter, more prepared. Holyfield promised the same as always, discipline and determination. From the opening rounds, it was clear Holyfield still held the advantage. He used his size, his clinches, his rough tactics to frustrate Tyson. Head clashes, intentional or not, opened a cut above Tyson's eye. Tyson, already boiling with frustration, began to unravel, and then came round 3, a round that would live in infamy. In the clinch, Tyson suddenly lunged forward, clamping his teeth down on Holyfield's ear. Holyfield recoiled in shock, screaming in pain. Blood streamed down his neck. The referee paused the fight, deducting points, but allowed it to continue. Moments later, Tyson did it again, this time tearing a piece of Holyfield's ear clean off. The arena erupted in chaos. Commentators lost their composure. The referee waved his arms, disqualifying Tyson. It was over. Evander Holyfield retained his title. Mike Tyson, once the baddest man on the planet, had become a figure of disgrace. The bite was not just an act of desperation, it was an act of surrender. For the first time, Tyson could not win with fists, so he chose infamy. The fallout was enormous. Tyson's boxing license was revoked. His reputation, already shaky, collapsed. The headlines were brutal: cannibal, disgrace, end of Iron Mike. The image of Holyfield clutching his ear in horror was seared into history. But beyond the scandal, something deeper was revealed. Tyson's third defeat was not just physical, it was psychological, spiritual. Holyfield had broken him, not only as a fighter, but as a man. Tyson's rage, once his greatest weapon, had betrayed him. In the aftermath, Holyfield stood tall as the embodiment of faith and perseverance, while Tyson drifted further into the shadows of his own chaos. For Tyson, the defeats against Holyfield were not just losses in the ring. They were battles of character, of self-control, of discipline, and in each, Tyson was found wanting. 2 men had now beaten him. 2 men had shattered the illusion of invincibility, and more were yet to come. The bite scandal left Tyson in exile. For months, he wandered through courtrooms, media storms, and psychiatric evaluations. His license was revoked, his name dragged through ridicule. The man who once represented raw power now symbolized madness. And yet, boxing, ever the theater of redemption, could not let him go. By 1989, Tyson's license was reinstated. The public, both horrified and fascinated, wanted to see him again. His return was a circus, his fights less about titles and more about the spectacle of Iron Mike. He still had enough venom to flatten fringe contenders and faded names. But the Predator's eyes no longer carried the same menace. Behind the scowl was a man haunted by demons. Still, the biggest fight of his post-Holyfield career loomed. A showdown with Lennox Lewis, the towering British champion, a man Tyson had once bullied during a sparring session as a teenager. Now, years later, Lewis had matured into a tactician, a master of the jab, a man with both skill and patience. He was the antidote to Tyson's chaos. The Lewis fight. The last super fight in 2002, Memphis, Tennessee. The Pyramid Arena. It was billed as the last great heavyweight showdown of its era. Mike Tyson versus Lennox Lewis. The build-up was toxic, with press conferences descending into brawls, insults hurled, and threats exchanged. Tyson, desperate to ignite fear, unleashed verbal assaults so venomous they became headline news. He promised to eat Lewis's children, to maim him. But underneath the bravado was desperation. When the bell rang, the difference was evident. Tyson charged as he always did, but Lewis was unmoved. He stabbed the jab like a spear, keeping Tyson at bay, nullifying the rushes. Each time Tyson tried to slip inside, Lewis tied him up, leaned on him, or punished him with uppercuts. By the middle rounds, Tyson was unraveling. His legs, once springs of dynamite, were heavy. His head movement was slow. His punches lacked snap. Lewis, patient and ruthless, picked him apart with precision. The once invincible monster now looked like a smaller man trapped in a larger fighter's game. In round 8, the end came violently. Lewis crushed Tyson with a right hand, sending him crashing to the canvas. Tyson, dazed, somehow beat the count, but the punishment resumed. Another barrage sent him reeling, collapsing again. The referee waved it off. Mike Tyson was destroyed. The fight was not competitive. It was a public unmasking. Tyson, once feared as the most destructive heavyweight alive, was reduced to prey. Lewis.com and collected stood over him as if conquering a myth. The aftermath was chilling. Tyson, his face swollen, admitted what fans had seen. "I tried my best, but my best wasn't good enough tonight." It was his 4th defeat. But it was more than that. It was the end of Tyson as a legitimate force. The Lewis fight was the final stamp of reality. The king had been dethroned permanently. After Lewis, Tyson lingered in boxing's margins. Money troubles and poor management forced him back into the ring. His skills had eroded, his aura gone. Yet promoters still dangled paydays. On July 30, 2004, in Louisville, Kentucky, Tyson faced Danny Williams, a British journeyman, respectable, but far from elite. To most, this was meant as a tune-up, a chance for Tyson to showcase what remained of his power. Early on, Tyson looked dangerous. He stormed Williams, unleashing hooks that staggered him. For a brief moment, The ghosts of the old Tyson flickered, but it was an illusion. By the third round, fatigue gripped him. His punches slowed, his feet dragged. Williams, emboldened, began firing back. In round 4, disaster struck. Williams trapped Tyson on the ropes and unloaded. Tyson, battered and helpless, sank under the barrage. The referee stopped the fight. The arena was stunned. Mike Tyson had been knocked out by a man few believed could survive more than a round with him in his prime. Later it was revealed Tyson had fought with a torn knee ligament. But excuses could not mask the truth. Tyson was finished. His fifth defeat was not just another loss. It was humiliation. The aura of the great destroyer was gone. Now, opponents who once would have trembled stood firm. Tyson had become a name, a paycheck, a fading echo of glory. Still drowning in financial ruin, Tyson fought once more. June 11, 2005. Washington, D.C., his opponent, Kevin McBride, a towering but limited Irish heavyweight. Unknown to most fans. From the start, Tyson looked tired, uninspired. He fought with flashes of aggression but no stamina. McBride leaned, clinched, mauled him, sapping the little energy Tyson had left. By the 6th round, Tyson was collapsing inward. On his stool, between rounds, he told his corner he was done. He refused to continue. The fight was stopped. Kevin McBride was awarded a TKO victory. For Tyson, it was the 6th and final defeat of his career. And unlike Douglas, Holyfield, Lewis, or even Williams, this one was not violent, not dramatic. It was quiet. It was surrender. The once terrifying warrior had quit on his stool, broken not by power but by exhaustion, by the weight of time. Mike Tyson never fought professionally again. His record stood at 50 wins, 6 losses, to no contests. But numbers alone could not capture the story. His defeats were more than blemishes. They were chapters in a tragedy. Against Douglas, he was undone. By complacency, against Holyfield, by discipline and faith. Against Holyfield again, by his own rage. Against Lewis, by superior skill and size. Against Williams, by time and injury. Against McBride, by the final surrender of spirit. Each loss stripped away another layer of the myth, until only the man remained vulnerable, flawed, human. And yet, Tyson's story did not end in bitterness. In the years that followed, he found a strange peace. He admitted his mistakes, confronted his demons, and reinvented himself as a cultural figure, a podcaster, an actor, even a cannabis entrepreneur. He became something few expected, a man who could laugh at his own past. His defeats, once humiliating, became lessons, proof that even the fiercest warrior is mortal, proof that glory is fleeting, but humanity endures. Today, Mike Tyson's name still echoes. To some, he is the greatest puncher in boxing history. To others, a squandered talent, a cautionary tale. But no one can deny the impact. He changed boxing, he terrified a generation, and he captivated the world. And in his defeats in Tokyo, Las Vegas, Memphis, Louisville, and Washington, he reminded us of something deeper, that behind every myth is a man. Behind every legend, a beating heart that can break. Tyson's 6 defeats were not just the unraveling of a career, they were the unfolding of a tragedy, the fall of a gladiator. And so, the story of Mike Tyson's 6 defeats is not just about boxing. It's about life, about power and downfall, about rage and redemption. From the shock of Tokyo to the surrender in Washington, every loss told us more about the man than his victories ever could. But what do you think? Was Mike Tyson's downfall inevitable, the product of chaos and self-destruction? Or could discipline and focus have made him the greatest of all time? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the rise and fall of Iron Mike, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next boxing documentary.